We're doing Michael, Freddy and Jason again. Yay! That's right, it's that time of the year again. It's 31 on 31, the October edition, the flagship edition, if you will, the one that started it all. And speaking of the one that started it all, Michael, Freddy and Jason. Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. Yeah, when we first started this 31 on 31, that's what we started with, the big three. A few years have passed since then. We've had a couple more Halloween films to throw to the pile, so technically this one isn't a 31 on the 31, but a 33. Basically, it's just a way for us to be a bit lazy and just rehash stuff we've done in the past, but just kind of throw two extra ones in there. Less work, I guess. We've talked about these films ad nauseum, so this is probably going to be a shorter video than usual. I'm not going to beat around the bush. You know the drill. This is a thing that was started 4 or 5 years ago by a few of us, and it's chopped and changed over the years. But this year we've got, of course, once again, Cody Leach, Willie Screedier, Sean Chandler, and me. So yeah, 33 films. I'm going to rank them all, starting with the worst, making my way to the best. Check out the other guys' videos once you've watched this one, if you haven't done so already, and let's get into it.
You want to know who Fred Krueger was? He was a filthy child murderer who killed at least 20 kids in the neighborhood. We found him in an old abandoned boiler room where he used to take his kids. We took gasoline, we poured it all around the place, then lit the whole thing up and watched it burn.
Did you know that a young boy drowned the year before those 2 others were killed? The counselors weren't paying any attention. They were making love while that young boy drowned. His name was Jason.
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
A few good kills cannot stop this terrible, made-for-TV looking piece of crap, looking like an 18 rated episode of Lex. Freddy on a broomstick tells you everything you need to know. A once frightening boogeyman who could invade your dreams has been turned into a Looney Tunes cartoon. Buster Rhymes. Jason Takes a Boat to Manhattan actually has a pretty decent final 15 minutes, featuring one of my favourite kills from the entire franchise, but man alive, the rest of the film is dull. One of my favourite characters of the franchise, Rachel, is dispensed with like she means absolutely nothing, only to have the void created by her demise be filled by one of the single most annoying characters in any slasher movie. None of the promise that was left at the end of part 4 is paid forward at all. Instead, we get a generic as they come slasher with a ridiculously over the top Loomis who, quite frankly, at this point should be locked up himself. Really just a film made to cash in on the success of Halloween. Terribly made, bad dialogue, laughable performances. How it ever garnered one sequel, let alone more, is beyond me. great visual aesthetic and production design, as well as an outstanding performance from Bad Dourif, are not enough to shake off Rob Zombie's painful dialogue and pathetic attempts at visual metaphor. It's the same film as the first, only more entertaining, thanks mostly to a heightened production value. I mean, we're not talking the difference between Prisoner Cell Block H and The Shawshank Redemption here. It's another Friday movie, which means another badly acted, badly scripted, cheap-ass slasher movie. It's just that there's more of the stuff that you come to these movies for, which means it kind of wins by default. Bonkers third act that really doesn't make much sense, coupled with a horribly creepy pairing of a young woman with a man old enough to be her father, really derails what starts out as an interesting premise. For a Friday movie, this has a bit more of an interesting setup than usual, as it attempts to ape films such as Carrie and Scanners. Unfortunately, it's not as good as either one of those movies, and it's also surprisingly bloodless in comparison to the rest of the series. With practically zero plot and no characters that feel like anything other than cannon fodder, it's left to the one-trick pony 3D gimmick of everything flying towards the screen to save the day, in 90 minutes of brutal kills. Fine, if you like that kind of thing. The script is lacking in connective tissue that would hold it together more solidly. Instead, director Rennie Harlin's primary concern seems to be taking us into as many weird dream sequences with as many creative kills as possible, which is entertaining for sure, but still unsatisfying as far as cohesive storytelling goes. Definitely a step up from the original in terms of quality, though admittedly that really wasn't a high bar. But you've got a sackhead Jason living out in the woods like a next level Norman Bates, and the kills are all pretty entertainingly distasteful. Enjoyable rubbish that is elevated from the realms of dull into entertaining thanks to a laughably bad performance from Paul Rudd in his feature film debut, and a wacky as hell plot that gives us the bizarre and needlessly convoluted origins of Michael Myers. Atrocious dialogue, which sees most characters melodramatically monologuing out loud, whilst also trying to make a heavy-handed commentary on mob mentality, all but derails the story. There are some genuinely entertaining, if unintentionally funny, set pieces, and Michael is at his most brutal. Laurie Strode spends most of the film in a hospital bed as we wait for Michael to reach her, thanks to a new piece of backstory shoehorned in about the two of them being brother and sister. That backstory doesn't work, but the atmosphere and tension carried over from the first film is enough to keep this one running as a piece of 80s slasher fun. A film that is understandably hated by a lot of die-hard Friday fans, given the rewriting of the franchise's history and the breaking of its typical formula in favour of a story that is just plain bonkers. But as I was never a Die-Hard Friday fan, I can really get on board with a lot of the crazy antics that are presented in this so bad it's good entry into the series. A film that was, dare I say, ahead of its time, filled with gay overtones and actually trying to have something to say, even if it doesn't quite manage to do it with any genuine level of subtlety. Freddy himself is still dark and menacing here too, not yet having become the wisecracking Looney Tunes character we find in later outings. I hated this film the first time I saw it, but on a second watch I came around to the second half of this. All the Rob Zombie added value stuff, like the Hick Myers upbringing, Sherry Moon attempting to act, the prison rape, that kind of thing, no thanks. But all the stuff once the adult Michael Myers gets to Haddonfield and we begin to see the stuff we recognise from John Carpenter's movie, all that stuff I'm pretty much on board with. Sure, this is pretty generic, pretty average, and Rooney Mara really looks like she doesn't want to be here, but I feel like Jackie Earle Haley was a good replacement for Robert Englund. He didn't really get a fair shake, which is a shame because in the hands of another director I think he could have taken the character to some dark places. The film overall for me just isn't as bad as people like to make out. It's essentially the same story as the original, just not as good, but certainly not an affront to cinema the way it's been painted. This film lacks the inventive set pieces and gruesome kills that we got with Part 4. However, I do think it has a much better script than that film. I know that most fans seem to hate this one, but purely from a character and story-driven standpoint, I felt this one was much more intriguing and had me wanting to know where it was going to end up. Just wish it had a bit more visual flair and bite. Definitely a more artistically handled film in the Friday series. It looks like a lot more care has gone into creating some genuinely captivating visuals, almost like they had a genuine movie director on this one. It's also the first film in the franchise that has a central character that actually feels like a character and not just a piece of meat or eye candy. Does exactly what it says on the tin. Takes two iconic slasher franchise headliners and makes them go head to head. It's dumb, it's loud, it's obnoxious, but despite all that, it still manages to be suitably entertaining. Director Tom McLoughlin knows exactly what kind of movie he's making. He has no pretensions about why people came to this franchise. Because of this, he has fun with it, even poking fun at the franchise itself, but always with a loving reverence that suggests he is a fan himself. Fun characters, wacky kills, entertaining set pieces, easily the best of the original Friday movies. There are lots of great ideas here, but unfortunately the execution of them is often poorly handled. The most obvious one being the character of Sartain. Nice idea, having him orchestrate a confrontation with Laurie Strode, but because of the way it's handled, it just feels like it comes out of nowhere. Still quite entertaining though. A solid reintroduction to the world of Haddonfield, with probably the best iteration of Michael Myers. An interesting story finally makes David Gordon Green's iteration of these characters relatable and compelling. Though this film does still suffer in the writing department when it comes to telling that story coherently. As a result, you are left to fill in a lot of the blanks yourself, making it a somewhat frustrating watch at times. Still, it has more subtlety than kills, and the final showdown between Michael and Laurie that we've all been waiting for is ultimately very satisfying. Though many fans will be wishing that Michael had more screen time. This film succeeds because of its concept and its characters. Rather than just lining up a usual round of annoying teens as cannon fodder for the killer, this film instead puts a group together that is actually made up of people you want to see make it to the end. It's a story about young people trying to take back their power and stand up for themselves. It's quite dated in parts. I've always found the ending to be a bit anticlimactic, But overall, it's a really solid movie that feels like a genuine sequel to Wes Craven's original. Very inventive and something of a blueprint for Scream, this film examines the impact of horror movies on popular culture by going behind the scenes of a Hollywood movie within a Hollywood movie and confronting the audience with questions about why it is we sit in a darkened theatre watching a man with knives on his hands slashing up hapless victims. Again, it hasn't dated very well in places, but at least it's trying to get to grips with things beyond big-breasted women being hacked up for the purposes of entertainment. The best written, best directed Friday the 13th movie with some actual story and characters. Some of those characters are laughably two-dimensional, but I feel that's a purposeful callback to, like, I don't know, every film in this franchise. While Myers in this looks pretty horrible, everything else from a story and character standpoint is so much more believable than anything we got in the recent trilogy. The final confrontation feels earned because the events of Halloween 2 still count in this timeline. So when Laurie talks of Michael, it doesn't sound super melodramatic because we know she went through everything that she went through in those first two movies. Ultimately, it's just a much more satisfying climax to these characters' stories. As a self-contained story that stands on its own, before Halloween 5 went and took a big steaming dump all over it, this was a really great ending to the Michael Myers story. It ends up being a film about the contagion of evil, which would hold much more power if the direct sequel had have done away with Michael Myers altogether and continued on with Jamie Lloyd as the new face of evil. Loomis is great, Rachel is great, especially her relationship with Jamie, and the ending is phenomenal. With a genius concept from writer-director Wes Craven, A Nightmare on Elm Street gives us a truly terrifying boogeyman in the shape of Freddy Krueger. The visuals are equally trippy and disturbing, and seeing that body bag being dragged down the dimly lit school corridors by an invisible force as a child was enough to make me wonder if I'd ever sleep again. The only things that let this movie down a little are some wonky performances and a final act that doesn't make much sense if you really start to think about it. John Carpenter reinvigorated the slasher genre after the likes of Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Black Christmas with Halloween, notable for its almost complete lack of blood and gore. It gained the reputation that it has through good old-fashioned suspense and atmosphere, as well as creating a memorable face of evil in the shape of Michael Myers. But equally memorable is his pursuer in the shape of Donald Pleasance's Dr. Loomis, a man so dogged in his pursuit that he may just be crazy himself, spitting out constant lines of exposition and yet somehow making it all work. While some of the impact may have worn off for me over the years, the film is still undoubtedly one of the best examples of the slasher genre. So that brings to a close my edition of this year's 31 on 31. Don't forget to check out Sean Chandler's video, Willie Screedy's video, and of course Cody Leach's video. They'll be coming out at various times during the day. Do let me and them know down in the comment section below what your ranking would be of these 33 movies. 33 on 31 this time. So yeah. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.